All right, welcome to Season 2 of the Sporting Chance Podcast, your home for all things falconry and unconventional hunting techniques.
This podcast is brought to you by MountainStateFalconrySupply.com. Check out Heather McNeamer's store for your East Coast falconry goods.
And also, this podcast is brought to you by MidnightFalconry.com, the makers of the tightest braided equipment on the market.
Check out supporter of the show, Sean O'Neill's Kennel, Clover Creek Canine on Facebook. Your source for performance canines since 1983.
And let us not forget our boy, Seth Roy, at NorthMountainGoshawks.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, visit SportingChancePod.com for all of your merch needs.
All right, Trevor Jahangard, welcome to the Sporting Chance Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here, man. Big fan, like I said earlier.
Appreciate it.
Trevor's a falconer, and he had one of the first good goshawk videos that I ever saw when I got into falconry. How long has that video been up on YouTube?
Oh gosh, it's got to be like 7-8 years now, maybe
9 years. I watched it yesterday. I watched it yesterday, and the Cooper's.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I've been doing falconry longer than that, but I think the first time I ever looked up goshawks, that came up. You know, with your cool side profile, holding a goshawk with the shades on.
Dude, shredded too.
Nice. I was then, not so much now.
He's a big fan of your physique.
Yeah.
No. That's what's important, you know.
I just noticed that his test levels are high. Most guys who fly goshawks, their test levels are top. Aaron's getting there. You only flew what, 3-4 goshawks?
No, only 2. So my test levels still have a ways to go.
You're still low. You got to fly a couple more, and then your test shoots up to 1,000.
Obviously, Trevor, you're a falconer, and do you mind telling us where you're based out of?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California, out of Ventura County.
A lot of falconers out there, huh?
Yeah, there's a couple.
Is it the most densely populated state for falconry?
I think it is. I mean, it definitely feels like that down here. You know, fields can be few and far between. Especially for the guys that are hunting ducks with long wings. Those guys are, you know, you got to show up early, like right at the crack of dawn, or you're not flying because there's going to be a falconer sitting there waiting to go. But luckily, I'm not doing that, so I don't really have to contend with that.
Have you ever showed up in a field and the other falconers show up?
Yeah, it happens a lot here. You know, there's only so many to go around, but you get a selection of fields and you go. You know, you just go to another one, depending on who it is. Someone you know, hop in the field, join them for a bit, fly when they're done. You know, otherwise you just go to the next one.
So you've been to fields and falconers you don't know have showed up to fly at home.
Yes, yeah, but there's so many people here, and it's, you know, there's no real cover. I mean, the cover is waist high, generally speaking, depending on what you're hunting, where you're hunting. So like you can see people from a long way off.
That's such a strange concept to me. So I'd imagine it's one of those things when somebody finds out you're a falconer, they probably, a lot of people probably know another falconer, don't they?
I mean, not the general public, but the falconry community here is, you know, it's small, even though it's big. Like, I wouldn't say everyone knows everyone because I don't know a lot of people. I don't go to all the meets. But a lot of people know, you know, the community.
I figured it'd be the kind of thing where you just mention to some stranger that you do falconry and they go, oh yeah, I know a falconer.
No, it's still pretty rare. No, not that common.
Okay. So how did you get into falconry?
I guess maybe it's not super typical. I was going to say, you know, when I was a kid, I was one of those kids that just loved animals, catching snakes and lizards and bringing home squirrels that fell out of a tree and, you know, give them a little bottle of milk, nursing him back to health, letting him go, all that kind of thing. And so I always liked animals. And then growing up, my dad had pigeons and chickens in the backyard. So, he hated it when the hawks would come around, and I loved it when the hawks would come around his pigeon loft, catch a pigeon and sit there plucking it. And he'd get upset, but I thought it was pretty cool. And then I actually went to high school in the parking lot of the Los Angeles Zoo. So there was this magnet school program that was a math and sciences magnet. And in the parking lot of the LA Zoo, they had set up these bungalows. And so I went to school there. And for biology class and some of our high school electives, we would go to the zoo and take our class in the zoo, which is pretty awesome for a nerdy animal loving kid like me. And then one of the classes in high school was actually you were a student keeper. It was an elective class, and you would help a zookeeper, do some basic cleaning. And so I started off in the petting zoo at the LA Zoo doing that. And then my next rotation, I went to the bird show, and they have a free flight bird show. They have a really good bird show there. And this is, this is when I was 15. So it was like 25 years ago now. It was a long time ago. So yeah, because I was comfortable with birds, I grew up with pigeons and chickens, but I had 50 pairs of lovebirds, a cockatiel, a Senegal, a conure. We weren't allowed to have like furry animals in our house when I was a kid. My mom was allergic to cats and dogs. My dad thought, they were dirty animals that stay outside. And so, but birds were okay. Birds were cool. So I grew up with birds, and I was breeding lovebirds and hand feeding the babies and selling them in the penny saver. So selling these trained hand fed lovebirds. And then, I ended up doing this thing in high school where we got to clean up bird cages at the zoo bird show, basically. And they saw that I was really comfortable with birds. And so I stopped rotating for the selective class, and I just stayed at the bird show for a whole year, a couple mornings a week. Basically, I would go to the LA Zoo, and I would start my day there. I would show up when they showed up early before school started and just clean bird cages. It's kind of, and then when I was there, I found out that falconry existed because the lead bird show trainer was a falconer, and he ended up becoming my sponsor.
Who was that?
John Gunther was his name.
I know that name, but I don't know them personally.
Yeah. He was the lead trainer at the bird show for I don't know how many years, but for quite a few decades.
Is he still around?
Yeah, he's still around. Haven't chatted with him much, but I've kind of been busy making babies. So.
Oh yeah, you got kids?
I have a 6-month-old and a 2.5-year-old, and moved jobs recently a couple times. I haven't been doing as much falconry these days as I'd like, but get back into it soon.
I understand that.
We got the kids blues ourselves.
Yeah, I got a 12. He's like a year and not quite a year and a half yet.
It doesn't stop Casey from doing falconry, though.
No, it's not going to end well. But I just keep going.
Yeah, there's definitely a way. I just haven't. The last bird that I flew was 2023 was a Passage Cooper's hawk on quail near my house.
That's cool.
So last year, my son was born in October, so I just kind of didn't make sense to even start the season.
That's the worst. Yeah, my eldest child was born in November, so it's a little rough.
Yeah.
How much game did you take that year, Casey?
What year was that? That was the year I had Karen, I think. So we were slaying it. No, I think that was the year I had Petrie, the pathetic Tiercel Finnish goshawk, and that was a train wreck. It wasn't my best year.
Yeah. So Trevor, you'd mentioned flying a Passage Cooper's hawk. You have the YouTube video where you're flying a goshawk. What else? What have you flown over the years?
I've flown for falconry. I've flown American kestrels, Harris hawk, red-tailed hawks, Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk, golden eagles, and goshawk.
Dang.
And then outside of falconry, I ended up going to school after high school, after this whole experience. I became a falconer when I was 15. And then I went to a program out here called the Exotic Animal Training and Management Program. It was a 2-year intensive 6-day-a-week program where you just learn how to train exotic animals. And then I ended up getting a job at the LA Zoo at the bird show. And then I was also training animals for movie and TV work, mostly for commercials, but also helping trainers for, training different animals on set. And so at the zoo, I was working with harpy eagles, African crowned eagles, Japanese hawk eagles, Steller sea eagles, bald eagles, Lander falcon, and then all kinds of fun stuff like roadrunners, macaws, African crowned cranes, the list goes on and on. There was a lot of birds in that bird show. So yeah, I got a lot of experience early on just in training a lot of different animals, camels, baboons, an alligator, a kinkajou. I don't know. There was a serval. It's an African cat, just all kinds of weird and random stuff. So it was a cool experience early on.
You should have snuck the harpy out to catch a jack.
Yeah. That would have been cool. But this harpy, we ended up just kind of, we'd pick it up and walk around the stage. The African crowned, we were trying to fly for a little bit. The bald eagles we had, they were aggressive. And so we would get, at the time at the bird show, the lead trainer, John, who was a falconer, master falconer.
Mounier?
What's that?
Was it Mounier?
No. He was a falconer, and he'd been a bird trainer for like 20 years at that point, and flighted eagles were hard to get, especially bald eagles. So whenever he heard about a really aggressive eagle at another zoo that was attacking zookeepers or something like that, he would get them transferred to us. So I ended up kind of cutting my teeth on all these really aggressive eagles.
Jeez.
So the bald eagles, like, they're biting your face and going after you. But I mean, they just needed good training, and then we had them free flying in the bird show, and it was all really cool. So,
have you ever been nailed by an eagle? Like a good footing on your arm?
Oh yeah. One of the female bald eagles, she was big. She put her hallux through the meat of my arm. Like she got a good like inch, and just like in one side out the other. She pulled the gauntlet down, and then grabbed me. She had a habit of doing that. Like she kind of knew. So she'd get a little sticky footed, and she'd be yanking on the edge of the gauntlet. And if you didn't hold it tight, then she would nail you on your bare forearm. So I learned that trick after she did that once or twice.
Oh my gosh.
I don't do it anymore. But I grew my beard out real big and wore sunglasses because she always tried to nail you in the face, and you can't really hold them far enough away from your body when they want to do that. But I it was never that bad, like little scratches and stuff, and you knew it was coming. And after a while, she calmed down. She just needed some consistent training. But early on, it's kind of nuts,
I can't imagine. It's hard enough getting hit by a red tail. How much it must hurt to be nailed by a bald eagle.
Yeah. It wasn't. It was unexpected. The African crowned eagle was pretty intense. I always had 2 gloves on. I had like a gauntlet and then a thick outer cuff, and he would still squeeze the daylights out of your arm. I mean, he never got me, but you can tell how much strength there is there. So it was a good intro to falconry and birds of prey, because I was still pretty young when I was working with those guys. But it made everything else that every other bird seemed like, not as scary anymore. Because if you jump from like a kestrel to a red tail, that's impressive. But if you go from working with aggressive eagles to getting a red tail, it's like, it's not so bad.
Right. Yeah. I'd imagine.
How many golden eagles did you fly?
I only worked with 2 golden eagles, and it was through a rehab program. And it was Hannibal and Juan Pablo were their names. And Hannibal, he was hunting and catching, and he was doing great. He got released, and then Juan Pablo, he ended up getting sick, I think, and then he went back to the raptor rehab facility, and then I ended up getting busy and not being able to take him back. but I got him to the point where he was chasing the RC car lure, and he was basically ready. He was chasing. He just hadn't caught anything yet.
How common are wild golden eagles in Southern California?
Where we're at, or where I'm at in Ventura County, they're not super common. But if you go inland a little bit, you go to the high desert, you go to Bakersfield, they're out there, enough that it's a little bit of a concern, but not as much of a concern as, coyotes.
Yeah, seeing wild golden eagles, specifically, bald eagles don't do anything for me, but wild golden eagles, you really feel like you're seeing something special, at least for me. You feel like you saw a wolf or a grizzly bear or a mountain lion.
Yeah. We would, when sometimes in the early days, we go out trapping, we're looking at telephone pole lines or power lines, and we would see, we're like, is that a ferruginous or is that a golden? And it ended up being a small male golden or something like that. So it's good fun to catch them out there from time to time.
Or a few years ago, I went to Arizona to trap a Harris hawk, and on the way back, we were going through New Mexico, and we were going down the highway, and we saw a golden eagle sitting on a high line. I was like, "Holy shit!" Stopped the car, took some pictures, and I was like, "Damn, that thing is massive." And then my buddy was like, "Wonder where the female is." Or no, he was like, "I wonder if that's a male or a female." I said, "I have no idea." And then we turned the curve, and there was the female. And you're like, yeah, that's the female. That's the male. The male looked like he was 3 feet tall. The female looked like she was 5 feet tall. Massive bird.
I got lucky. The 2 males that I flew, they were tiny, which was awesome. Much easier on your arm, and they're more maneuverable. So if you're flying a big female out here, they're like a freight ship, they'll catch jacks, but it's just like, it's a little more tricky. You get a small male. That's the ticket. You get some really cool flights. They're really maneuverable.
What would you say is a small male?
Oh man, I don't even remember the weights. I think I had one male that was flying at like 2,900 grams when he was going. That's I think a pretty smallish male. Maybe it was a little bit lower.
Yeah, it's a big bird, but as far as golden eagles are concerned, that does sound pretty small. That would probably be like the perfect bird for jackrabbits.
Yeah. There's a falconer out here, Tony Seferdini. He has a golden eagle named Jesus. I forget what he flies at. He's flying much larger these days. But he's not a big male, but he's amazing. And I think Tony got him because he was a mount imprint, and so he's the one that helped me get the other 2 birds, through that rehab falconry program to help get them going and then be re-released. And he's trained and released, 20, 25 golden eagles now. So he really knows his stuff when it comes to that. It's fun to watch him fly Jesus around. It's pretty cool.
It's awesome.
All right, Casey, go ahead. I've been kind of...
What? The problem is if I start, then it just turns into a hectic, nonstop questionnaire.
Well, so we talked about golden eagles and how you got started, and Casey and I love talking goshawks. Yeah. So I'm going to let Casey take it away with the goshawks.
Are we taking it all the way away? Like going right into it? Because I really want to talk about imprinting, because it's imprinting season. Everyone's watching Trevor's video right now. Everyone's going on Amazon, ordering a friggin' remote control car. And you know what I mean? And so I just you did a really good job at the bird. Your video was great. And we'd like to do a series. We don't want to get too obnoxious with the series, but just some of the, more knowledgeable falconers that do imprints, we'd like to break down what they did, so that the listeners could have it as a point of reference to go back to and listen to it. And there's videos, there's books, but there isn't a podcast where we have a really accomplished falconer breaking down step by step what they do. And it might be boring. We don't have to get too detailed into it, but you could do a brief rundown, and then I can ask you more detailed questions as you go. Unless there's anything about your falconry history that you think we missed that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I can. I guess I flew red tails, and then I was flying kestrels. They got eaten by Cooper's hawks, so then I started flying Harris hawks. Then I started flying Cooper's hawks because they were more of the accipiter challenge. And then I flew a Sharpie. And then Giselle, this is the disclaimer. Giselle was my one and only goshawk.
Oh, dude, forget it.
Only time.
No, just kidding.
The only time I flew a goshawk, and then after her, I've been flying eagles and Cooper's hawks. I want to get a goshawk again, obviously, but so with that disclaimer, I can tell you, what I did and why I did it, and kind of the background behind it. So obviously, I came from an animal training background, and so my approach with the imprint goshawk was, full on food association. Every single piece of food that she ate I got her at 8 years old from a breeder. I wanted to, go climb an S, but I didn't have much vacation time and it wasn't a for sure thing. So I wanted to, put a plan together and make sure I had everything ready to go. So I got her from a breeder at 8 days old, and I hand fed her every single piece of food that she got, basically until we got to the point where we were actually chasing rabbits, where she was hard penned. And then I mostly stopped feeding her by hand. And then I switched to throwing a tidbit of food on the ground. I stopped calling her to the glove, not because of aggression, but just the training process. So when she was a baby, I didn't try to hide food. I didn't bring her to the food. I just, fed her by hand all the time. And then I hacked her also. So at the time I was working on a 250 acre farm, something like that. And we had 40 employees, tractors, trailers, horses, cows, sheep, dogs, you name it, it was there, and there was stuff moving. So I would set her up at the main barn in sort of a weathering area, if you want to call it that, a protected weathering area, and just let her watch everything drive by, people drive by, horses drive by, just as much as possible. And then I would, go out there and feed her a couple times a day. And then when she got old enough, I started hacking her. And I think I have some of this in the video on YouTube that I did, where, she was pretty chill and hanging out with people, chasing the barn cat around. And then it just got to the point where she started hanging out around the chickens a little too much. We had chickens out in pasture, so they weren't in a cage or in a chicken coop. They were out in the open. And I didn't want that to become a problem. So I think after 30 days of hack, I decided to pull her in and end the hack, and then, get started in training in earnest. And basically what I did with her, because I could use tidbits, is every night she spent the night in a giant hood. Every day she was either in that weathering area or she was in a, large, clear Rubbermaid tub going around with me until she was too big for that. And then I would just transport her in the nest to wherever I would perch her out, basically, but always in a place with people and things happening. And I would carry this little dog fence with me, this collapsible dog fence, and I would set it up around her. So no matter where I took her as a baby, I knew, dog wasn't going to get to her, kid wasn't going to get to her. I'm around a lot of kids, I have a big family. So that was kind of how I raised her, was just exposure to everything, every possible moment that I could, and then hand feeding everything, using tidbits with her when she was young to get her to eat off of the rabbit lure, get her used to the RC car being near her, get her used to the giant hood, just getting her used to all those situations. And then
I have
when
a question
she started, yeah, go ahead.
Getting her used to all of those outside stimuli, it almost feels like to me that none of that even matters, because when they get hard penned, they're going to be freaked out by everything.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my experience. And again, this is like, this is a one-off thing that I don't have a lot to compare to, but because of my animal training background, I felt like having the tidbits of food was a tool that I could use to shape her behavior. So if there was some kind of negative association coming along, I could use the food to make it a positive association.
Can you gotta talk? Okay, so I hand fed Betsy, my North American, and the first season she did great, phenomenal, no difference from any other of the good birds, any of the birds that I imprinted, and they turned out well. The problem was the second season she had she was very aggressive the second season, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying I've done it, so I understand the concept behind it. Can you explain what you were doing so when the bird was screaming at you in the nest, you were hand feeding her, or were you not? Or were you waiting for her to have a very relaxed body language to then feed her by hand?
She never screamed. She started making noise when I started later on in the hack, when I started sort of controlling. I wasn't really controlling her weight, but I was controlling the timing on food. So at the end of I'd let her go beginning of the day, when I would, go to work. And then I would I'd go check on her a couple times throughout the day because she was on the farm. And then end of the day, around 4 p.m. is when I'd call her down and we'd do our training. So I would call her down wherever she was. And then, I would usually, or in the beginning, I'd get her in the nest and I could use a tidbit for that. And then I'd pick her up and take her to where we were going to train with the RC car. So then, she would chase the RC car, quote unquote, chase. At first, she was just kind of running it down. Eventually, when she was really flying, she was actually chasing it. And then her food at that time would all be coming from the rabbit lure that was attached to the RC car, or the magic carpet, which is a piece of AstroTurf that I would put next to the rabbit lure to get her to jump off, and she would eat the tidbits on that, or the lure. So usually what I did was I was trying to mimic what a hunt in the field would be like. So I'd call her down from the hack. We'd go to the field that was next to the house where I was hacking her. She would chase the RC car rabbit lure. She'd catch the rabbit lure. And then I would transfer her to the normal lure that I would carry in my bag. And then I'd transfer from that to the magic carpet, the AstroTurf piece of carpet. And then we would do that a couple times until she basically ran out of food. And then I'd put her in the giant hood. I'd put a tidbit or two in the giant hood. She'd go in there, and then I'd take her home, put her in a little weathering area I had set up in my living room in my house. And then at night, I'd just pick her up and put her in the giant hood to go to sleep. So that was kind of the process. So she, the only time I really heard her screaming was just when I would call her down from the hack. And then she screamed a little bit early on as we were starting to get out into the field. But I basically just, as she was flying better and better, I would just take her to the field, set up the RC car with the lure. We'd walk around a bit, try to get some flushes, and then we'd, hit the RC car lure. And we would just do that multiple times. So that was kind of how she was getting her exercise. So she screamed, but really not that bad. It was pretty mellow. And I dropped her weight really slow. I can't remember exactly how old she was, but she caught her first rabbit. She had been like 4 or 5 months old. It was like getting later into the season. So I think I got really lucky. I didn't put the screws to her, so I didn't go too fast, and I didn't take too long, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I agree with the slow approach. I asked about the hand feeding and the screaming because I hand fed a bird, and I consulted with Jeff Redag, who does a lot of hand feeding. And I've heard of a lot of people that do hand feeding, but I've never had anybody explain it to me as clearly as he explained it to me. Because I was like, hand feeding, like you're basically like associating yourself with the food. And then I spoke with Steve Lehman, and, he gave me a little insight into the natural history that they're not really necessarily trying to kill their parents. They're more or less trying to outcompete their siblings in the field, in the wild. So, being the parent isn't really that big of a deal, if you think about it. But Jeff told me that when I'm feeding by hand, if the bird is screaming or walking towards me, you're not hand feeding. You're waiting till the bird is preening or she's laying down or calm, and then you're hand feeding to try to shape the behavior. If you're calm, you get fed. And then you just build that all the way up as you continue to go. So as you were driving around in the truck or the side-by-side in the farm and you had the bird next to you and she started getting a little nervous about something, maybe you would hand feed her then to try to calm her down. Like, okay, so there's nothing bad happening. And just kind of use the hand feeding as like a tool to shape her behavior that things are not always bad. So that's why I asked. The screaming, I have birds that scream. So pretty much any other bird that I get, they're going to start screaming too. So I'm not really too worried about the screaming, but more of the aggression that people are concerned about. Would you recommend somebody that doesn't, knows how to train a camel, hand feed their first goshawk?
No, I would tell them to like follow the recipe, the McDermott recipe or something else, but I don't know that I would suggest that they hand feed them. I would say expose them to everything you can. Keep them really full, hack them, and then hunt the heck out of them. So I think a lot of the reason why Giselle turned out so great, because she kind of ended up being like a Harris hawk in the field. I would bring, 15, 30 people in the field with me. She was totally fine. The only thing that freaked her out, it wasn't even trains. It was semi-trucks, semi-trailers for whatever reason. It was like the one thing that kind of freaked her out. And she wouldn't get crazy. She didn't like go to the next county. She just would, fly up into a tree, sit for 10 minutes. And then when she calmed back down, we could start hunting again. But no, I wouldn't recommend that for your first bird. I did that with my first bird because I understand training really well. And so that's how my brain worked. But I didn't really use the tidbits as training when she was a baby. I used it when she was older.
Okay.
So for me, all that exposure and all that hand feeding was just to create the connection. But then once we started hunting, I was always directing her away from me and feeding her for going away from me. So like, as an example, I never called her to the fist the entire first year that I had her and that we hunted. Never once called her to the fist. I would wave my hand and whistle, then throw a tidbit on the ground.
Yeah.
So if I wanted her to come to me, if I couldn't go pick her up, she would fly over and land on the ground near me, eat the tidbit, and then hop on my glove. And the idea of the tidbit or the small piece of food is there's just nothing to like get aggressive about for them or to, get footy over or anything like that. So I wouldn't call her to the fist the first year. And then what I would do is when we would go out into the field and we did start catching rabbits, when she caught that first rabbit, instead of doing multiples right away, I would feed her maybe a quarter of her diet. And then walking back to the truck, I would have her attached to the leash, but it would be a long leash on the glove, like a 10-foot leash. And I would throw tidbits away from me when she was, standing on the glove, nice and tall, looking around as we were walking back to the truck. And I was doing restrained pursuits all the way back to the truck. And the reason why I did that was because I had a previous experience with a imprint Cooper's hawk where always on the way back to the truck, they freaked out. And I'm just, I guess, a really bad hooder. So I never hooded any of my birds. And so this is my way of getting Giselle's energy out after she caught a rabbit without cropping her up on the rabbit and then still getting her to burn weight and still getting her focus and sit on the glove.
Okay.
And so other than that, when I would do restrained pursuits on purpose on the way back to the truck, I never held her jesses in the field. If she wanted to fly off, she flew off. If she, wanted to bait at the wrong time, she baited at the wrong time, but I never held her jesses. So I don't know. I had a very unique approach, I guess, which was super hand association with tidbits while a baby. And as soon as we started really training hard to the RC car and she was flying, no more hand association with food, no more feeding of tidbits right to her face. Then it was all, all of her focus and energy was directed away from me, always going away from me for food and never coming to me directly for food. Now, at the end of the second year, then I started calling her to the glove and I never had a single instance of aggression with her, except I think she was like 4 or 5 years old. And I went to go grab a rabbit. It was the first or second of the season. And she grabbed my hand, but she just kind of like popped my hand. And I was just being careless and moving fast. I think like I had dinner on the stove. It was winter. I had a half an hour to hunt type of thing. But no, she ended up being, I saw a bunch of people flying goshawks in the field. Everyone around me had goshawks. And I would always call them to ask for advice with her if I needed it. But She was the most Harris hawk like goshawk that I'd seen in the field.
That's awesome. Okay, there's a lot there to unpack. I usually do restrained pursuits back to the truck if we don't catch anything, or if I'm trying to punish them. And well, not punish them, but like if they're flying like shit and we don't catch anything, like they're not getting. I'm not calling them to the lure for a fat reward. They're gonna work the whole way back to the truck to get their reward, and then I'm gonna put them in their mew. I'm gonna go inside, relax, and then I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna put in a frozen, half of a quail in there that they have to pull on all night. You want to fly like that, then you have to work now. If you catch the rabbit, it's a lot easier for you to catch the rabbit, and that's like Steve Lehman's whole thing. Make it harder for them to get their meal, and make it easier for them to get the rabbit and get a full meal. To like just to make it So I do stuff like that, but yeah, some birds start wigging out when they're done eating in the field, and then you start walking back to the truck. That's when they start getting spazzy. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and thank you for that explanation, is the introduction, because this is something that everybody, there's two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about baggies, okay? And then I also want to talk about, and this one might be just quick, and then we can jump into baggies, is when you're first introducing the glove to your bird to get them to step on the glove and be comfortable on the glove. Did you see any issues with that or any other birds that you dealt with?
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to go back to the restrained pursuit thing. Part of the reason I did that was because it's so hot here all the time in Southern California, where I am. We don't really, like in the winter, it's cold is like 40 degrees. And sometimes in the winter, we'll get a Santa Ana wind event that comes in where it gets super windy. You get these hot winds. And so, on Christmas Day, it'll be like 85 and sunny. So her weight control was always a tricky thing because you don't have a lot to work with because she's not dropping weight quick unless she's really burning calories, getting exercise. So the restrained pursuits on the way back to the truck was if we had an easy hunt, then I wanted her to still get energy out. And I didn't, that was me exercising her regardless of whether or not we caught something. I was always trying to do that just to keep getting keep burning the calories, keep building muscle, and keep trying to get her to that point just because it's so hot here all the time. So that was also part of the reason why I did that. And also it just, in the future, she had a tendency to really not bait at all. Also because I didn't hold her jesses, but all the restrained pursuits, I think just, it didn't make it a negative. I guess it sounds negative, but it didn't really make it a negative. So I just want to throw that out there.
That was good.
And then in regards,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think we're being rude because some people may not have any idea what we're talking about. Restrained pursuits. Can you just explain what it is?
Yeah. So restrained pursuit is, the way I did it is you have your bird on your fist, you're holding the leash pretty close to the jesses, and I would throw a tidbit out, not so as obvious so she could see it coming from my hand, but I would kind of use my body to block it, hold my hand down low and throw out a piece of food like 10, 15 feet ahead. And then she would bait at it, and you let them bait and you slowly walk towards it and you slowly let the leash out. So it's kind of like a bird on a treadmill. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's like they're pursuing the tidbit for 15 feet, really baiting at the end of the leash, but it's not a bait where they hit the end of the leash and come back. It's a bait where they hit the end of the leash and they stay there and they're basically pulling you like a sled dog. And so it's helping them, really work that muscle and, get that energy up and build up that muscle. That's the restrained pursuit idea. And then
great description.
And then in regards to the glove, so when she was a baby, way too young to be picked up, and I was, doing all that other stuff of exposure, I always had the glove around. So I always had the gauntlet that I was going to use with her around. And sometimes she'd end up sitting on it. I just left it kind of in the nest or on the floor with her when she was, hanging out, hopping around. So she saw it a lot. And when I would go to move her, what I would do is, scoot her into the nest and then pick up the nest and move the nest when she was young. And I would put the glove in the nest. So sometimes she's sitting on the glove in the nest. So when it came to the point of actually using the glove to pick her up, it was something she'd seen over and over and over again. Same thing with the RC car. I always had it around her and exposed her to it and drove it around a little bit when she was still really young and not even at hack, just to get her used to it. So that was my approach with the glove. And then I started picking her up with the glove when she became a brancher and she could hack, but I would always do it in a way where she had an easy place to go if she wanted to. And I wasn't holding her or restraining her or anything like that.
Can you explain why holding her, why you didn't hold her?
I mean, at this point, she's a baby. And if you were holding Jess's and she jumped off, you're just going to wreck their legs. So I had put Jess's on her. I forgot at what age I put Jess's on her, but I put anklets and Jess's on her so she could get used to them. But I never held them until she was almost hard penned. And actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I think I did before she was hard penned. I would tie her to a perch on the ground.
How'd that go?
So it went fine. I mean, I also had around that perch because again, there were a lot of kids and animals around where I was. I had that dog crate fence around her. And so there was kind of like a physical block and the leash would only go so far. But yeah, I never really had an issue with restraining her. But when I did pick her up on the glove when she was young, before she could fly, I never held the Jesses. And even when she could start flying during the hack, I still never really held the Jesses. I always used the nest or the lure or a tidbit to get her where I needed her. I never restrained her really. Or, I immediately put her in a giant hood in a crate.
Right. Just because for like what you're saying is perfect. Just I've noticed for myself that like on a practical day-to-day basis, dealing with the younger bird and the glove, and let's say I got my weathering area in my backyard and I want to take her to a field to hack her, walking 60 yards to my truck, it's taken me as long as 20 minutes just to walk across my yard because I'm walking and I don't want her to bait and be restrained because that could potentially have a negative effect on the glove and her on the glove, and it's traumatizing, and now she wants nothing to do with the glove. So what I did is I can't just let her go wherever she wants. I would have a long leash, and then if she baited, always tried the nest bowl first, of course. So usually the nest bowl, but then at a certain point, you want to switch to the glove. If she baited, I would just do like a restrained pursuit and just lower her to the ground. And if she was all wigged out or something, I would just stand there and just be very calm. And then I would make my way in and just get her to step up onto the glove and then walk to the truck. And if we had to do that again, we would do it again. I don't know if that's ideal, but I just found that was what I had to do to try to not, have any negative association with the glove, but also needing to move the bird.
Yeah, I definitely did that as well. It was just sort of a shorter stage. It was like an in-between stage where, it's kind of the perfect window because when they're younger than that, you're just not even doing that. And then when she was older than that, I could hold her and turn it into a restrained pursuit. But I tended to just use the giant hood a lot. If she didn't want to sit in the nest, I used the giant hood to get her to move around. And because she spent every night in it, basically until she had caught her first rabbit, and then she started spending the night out, in her mews. So the giant hood for me was just a tool. Yeah, I did the same thing. If she would bait, I would just lower her to the ground carefully and not make it a big deal.
What kind of giant hood do you use?
I've used a couple different ones. I can't remember the name of it. I ended up buying one, but I usually just use a dog crate. I forget what size it is. And then I would use, what's that stuff called that you put on the wall for tools? Pegboard. I would just use pegboard and put that on the door and the windows. And just a normal crate with pegboard on it seemed fine.
Would you do a perch in there or a platform in the back or something?
Yeah, I had a perch in there. I never had equipment attached to her. She was always free in there. I mean, she had Jesses that kind of stayed in. I would use a zip tie actually to keep the Jesses from falling out until I found some better ones that would fit. But I eventually ended up buying a nice light hood, smooth walls, completely dark. But she did fine in either one.
Okay. The big dog crate style is great for putting the box in at night, the nest bowl in at night.
Yeah, definitely.
a traditional box, there's no real way to do it unless you like lay it on the ground and then slide the bird in, and there's no headspace. I'm a big proponent of keeping the bird in the box, every night, eating out of there. A good friend of mine gave me that advice early on, and I think they bait to go in the box when you're going hawking, like they're baiting to get in there. And then when we're done hawking and they caught something, 9 times out of 10, almost 10 times out of 10, when I get home and open up the door to take them out to bring them into the mew, they're in there sleeping on the ground.
Yeah.
They don't get defensive about the box if you feed them in there.
I never had that experience.
No.
I wasn't feeding her large amounts. It was always, a tidbit or two, something like that. I think I have a video. It's when I was in Arizona. We're done hunting and we go back to the truck, and I just have the doors open and the giant hood open, and she just hops on the car door and hops in the giant hood. I think I had a tidbit in there. It always worked pretty well.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Because if you don't do it, and I had a tiercel that I didn't do it with, and it's like a friggin' nightmare to get them to go in there if they're not used to it. And if you're in the hacking mode, they're in the dispersal mode, and things are kind of making them a little uneasy. And then you go to put them in the box, and it's like this friggin' ordeal to get them in the box just to drive, to do an exercise or to hack or whatever. And it's just, if you make them very comfortable with it, I think it helps a lot. It's a huge plus to do that. Now, I'd like to talk about baggies with you, because you mentioned the recipe, and I followed the recipe one time. And I didn't, granted, I don't, it was my first goshawk that I raised, so that's probably part of it. That's most of it. But the whole idea to do like 50 baggies a day, like I don't think that helps. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I only bagged her on 2 things. One was a pigeon, because that was like my safety net. I always knew I could get her back. She flew off if I had a pigeon with me. So I'd always early on, I would keep a pigeon with me, so I knew I could get her back. And eventually I ended up bagging her on a duck just because she needed a little extra push, but I never bagged her once on a rabbit. I think the RC lure car, and then training her with that RC lure car in rabbit fields seemed to help, because what would happen is I'd set up the RC car before I took her out, and we would walk the field, we'd bump some bunnies, she would chase them. And then I would kind of end the session on the RC lure car. So she knew, she knew the difference. She knew it was the lure. She knew it was the RC car. But eventually one of those days we bumped a bunny, she just caught it. And then we were entered. And I think that helped also. It helped me not to drop her weight and have a bird that was too aggressive and, screaming her head off, because she ended up being super silent in the field. And the only time she talked, and it was like, like it was a whisper. It was, in her mews, but I also would go in her mews and go in there with her and feed her. So yeah, for me, I never used a bagged rabbit for her at all. I bagged her on a pigeon once just to make that association. And then I bagged her on a duck once just because she was a little hesitant when I first started going after ducks.
That's good. Yeah, that's great. I think just a quick, the reason why I asked that is because I had a tiercel fin. It was my first bird of my own. And I got a bunch of quail and a bunch of pigeons. And every day I would, I'd take her out. I'd take him out. I would try to put slips in front of him, and then I would throw out a quail. And the quail, they don't fly good, they're not like, and he would catch that. And then it almost seemed like he was just basically like just kind of chasing stuff around lazily, waiting for me to like end the day, with what he knew was coming. And I don't know if that's just me reading into it too much, but I just think if you over bag them, it just becomes like they wait for the baggie. Like, they know it's coming because they get one every day or whatever, multiple times a day, and then they have to go chase this rabbit running full speed through the, the bushes, and they have to crash. And I don't know. I just think it's like, I think the RC car, like you said, I think kind of like does the same thing, and you can make that as easy or as difficult as you want. I don't know how fast the thing was. Was it gas powered or electric?
No, I had an electric, but this thing moved. It hauls because Tony Sefferdini uses a similar car to train all the golden eagles that he trains. And this thing is going at like 45, 50 miles an hour. I forgot what it's called. It was like a Traxxas or something like that. It was expensive, wasn't cheap, but no, it wasn't a gas powered one. It was electric, but it worked really well. Got the job done.
Yeah. So I did exactly what you did with I use a lure machine, and I do the same thing. I set it up, flick the thing on. If I'm working a hedgerow and, I know it's going to take me an hour or two to work the hedgerow and there's rabbits in there, I put the thing all at the end. And it's like as if sometimes the dog doesn't even know the difference. And when you get to the end, I just click the button if she didn't catch anything, and that thing comes ripping out the side of the hedgerow, running like a rabbit, and bird hits it. And I think, I mean, you can't really get a baggie to run like that unless it's a wild baggie. So I think that, throwing out a rabbit that just stands there and then the bird just hits it, it's like, but that's like the alternative. It's funny. It sounds funny when you say it like that, but it's like, if you buy a rabbit, and it's not going to run like that. It's just going to run 2 steps, and then the dog's going to chase it, and then it's going to run like a domestic rabbit or something. And then, unless you got a steady stream of wild rabbits coming in, and most states, I don't think you could trap rabbits, so it's, so you really have an RC car, a lure machine, or a shitty baggie that runs like garbage. And it's like, you don't want your goshawk chasing shitty baggies constantly, because then they just learn, I'm going to wait for this piece of shit to, I'm not going to chase that thing that's hauling ass across the field. I don't know. That's just my thought.
I remember early on, this was for a red tail, like when I was really just first starting, maybe I was still an apprentice, but it seemed to know the difference between a live rabbit and a lure. And it just wouldn't chase the live rabbit, but it would chase the heck out of the lure. And so eventually what I did was I got a rabbit and froze it, and I would drag the frozen rabbit. And that actually seemed to help, just for whatever reason, change the sight picture in that bird's mind. It was a tiercel. I mean, that doesn't matter, but he eventually actually started chasing live rabbits. At the time, I didn't have an RC car. I was just pulling a lure, but the frozen rabbit seemed to help with him, at least. So that's an option too. But I don't know, trying to drive around with a frozen rabbit in your bag all the time, that would be a pain too. So
yeah, it gets old. And if you freeze them with their legs stretched out and they stick out of the side, the little nails stick holes in your bag. Yeah, it's annoying.
I actually used to do that with a red tail. I had this red tail that would catch 4 or 5 rabbits a day. And I was trying to get them away from her alive as baggies for other falconers. And so I would trap English house sparrows, cut them in half and freeze them with their wings out and legs out. And so when I would trade her off of a rabbit that she caught, she would jump right off like super fast for this half of a frozen sparrow. And if I didn't do that, if it wasn't frozen and splayed out, kind of, she would just swallow it in one gulp. But if it was still kind of frozen and still kind of sticking out,
that's clever.
It took her a little while to eat it. So I just throw a half a sparrow and she'd jump right off this like still live kicking rabbit. So anyways, I did that a little bit just to, get baggies for folks that needed them, but that seemed to work.
That's a clever idea, actually. So you just got them stacked up in there like playing cards, just like with their wings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd bring a cooler with me, like with ice packs, just to keep them frozen so it worked better.
Dude, and you probably didn't even get a thank you from those people you're getting the baggies for.
I got to thank you. I hooked them up. They were happy about it. I mean, I asked for plenty of stuff when I was coming up in the falconry world, bugging all these guys here that, had been doing falconry for decades longer than I had. So I had to do something to, earn my keep.
Yeah.
So Trevor, how long did you fly that goshawk?
Giselle.
I think I got her in 2015, and then I sold her. I ended up leaving that farm that I was working on, and I wasn't sure where I was going to end up, and I couldn't keep her. And so I ended up selling her to another falconer here. So I had her for 6 years. So the first 2 years was hunting with her. And then that third year is when she laid that first egg, and I had her raise a Cooper's hawk because I try to, get goshawk semen and inseminate her, and it didn't work out that first time. And then the second time, so I had her raise a baby Cooper's hawk that I then flew. This was Ivan, who I made a video of his training.
You talk about that. That was super cool watching a goshawk feed a coops. That was super cool.
Yeah. I mean, my thought process was hopefully the next year she would be successful artificially inseminated, and then I would have her raise her own baby. And that did end up happening. But in the meantime, I'd put in all this work. She built a nest. She laid 3 eggs. I tried to artificially inseminate her. It just, none of them were fertile. And I thought, well, we've come this far. I should let her raise something. And I want to fly a coops. So, I pulled a Cooper's hawk. I think it was 5-6 days old. I can't remember, maybe 4 or 5 days old. And then I just put it in the nest. I talked to a bunch of the falconers here, and I was like, hey, is she going to eat this thing, or is she going to, treat it like a baby that just hatched? And, they all reassured me. They're like, no, she knows it's a baby hawk. She's going to go sit on it and be its mom. And sure enough, she did. So I have that, and I think I have that in her video. And then I have it in the video I did of the Cooper's hawk of Ivan, where I put him in the nest, and she jumps up to the edge of the nest. Because I did it when she was away. She jumped off the nest to go do something, and then I put him in there. So she came back to the nest, and then all of a sudden there was this hatched baby for her to take care of. So she, gingerly walks over, does the rubber foot thing, toes closed, and goes and sits right up next to him. And I was like, okay, cool.
That's so cool.
This is going to work out. Yeah. And then I would go in there and help feed a little bit the first couple of days until she got the hang of it. And then she really got the hang of it, and she just raised him from there.
How long did you leave that coops in the chamber with her before you pulled it?
I left him in there until, basically he was branching and I could hack him. And then I started putting him out at hack. And then in the evenings, at first I'd bring him back and put him back in with her. And then I started doing the thing where when he was a little older, he was almost hard penned. I had him sleeping in the giant hood. And then I kind of just did the same process I did with Giselle with him, where I'd call him in from the hack, and then we, go right to the field and go hunt. And although I wasn't using an RC car with a lure drag.
Yes. RC motorcycle with a sparrow.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It took him a little bit longer to get him entered on game, but I knew we had these spots on our farm where we'd have a barn with young English house sparrows. And I could basically chase them out into the tall grass pastures, and then I could go flush them. So it's kind of like a bag almost, but without it being a bag. And that worked out really great to get him entered. And then we would just, we just got started hunting, after that. So
that's neat. Now, you mentioned it twice, but with Giselle and the Cooper's hawk, when you're calling them in from hack, how are you calling them in from hack?
Most of the time I just show up back to the house and they were there ready for a meal, ready to come in. So sometimes in the morning I would feed them a little bit if that reaction was too strong. If they came in screaming and they came in hard, screaming really loud and seeming pretty agitated when I got home, then I would feed them a little bit the next morning before I'd put them out at hack. But if they didn't come down when I got there, then I just throw out a lure, call them to the lure, give them a tidbit, pick them up, put them in the giant hood, and then I'd go set everything up for the hunt, basically, or the RC car training session or whatever it was going to be.
So if you called them to the lure, they would only, early on in that kind of stage, they would only get a tidbit from any interaction with you.
Yeah, they never got more than that. I never jackpotted them a bunch of tidbits, or I never used a tiring. I just didn't want to give them anything to be possessive over. Because with a little tidbit of meat, that's it's a little 1 or 2 gram piece of meat. Once they eat it, it's gone. So there's no, it reduces the possessive aggressiveness. There's just nothing to fight over. There's nothing for them to mantle over.
Yeah.
At least initially they would come to the lure, but it was a pretty weak call back to the lure, which is what you want when they're young. You don't want them hitting that lure super hard, because then, it's not a good sign. It's you dropping their weight too fast, because if you're not even hunting yet and they're smashing the lure, it's time to slow things up a bit.
So now when you're feeding in the morning, because I did the exact same thing you did, and I overshot it one morning, and I think I gave her a little too much, because in the afternoon she wouldn't come down, and she ended up having to sleep out overnight because she wouldn't come down. So it's just a trial and error thing. You have with a female goshawk, are you giving 10 grams, 15 grams? Like, were you weighing the food, or you just knew like the front leg of a rabbit was good enough in the morning, or just a couple tidbits? Like, how are you gauging that?
I was weighing it. I got her used to the scale pretty early, so I was weighing the food. And if I could weigh her, I would, if I could get her on the scale, I'd put her with the nest on the scale, and then I would, subtract the weight of the nest to try to get an idea of that. But yeah, I'd say it was like maybe 10, 15 grams in the morning sometimes. But I did the same thing. She spent one night out, which freaked me out because we had great horned owls galore where we were. But knock on wood, nothing happened. The Cooper's hawks, I've hacked a couple Cooper's hawks, and I don't know, they would always kind of get to the point where they'd end up spending a night or two out. And I was like, okay, it's time to end the hack. But with Giselle, it happened once, and then it didn't happen again for, a couple weeks. And I just figured out how to dial it in a bit.
Right. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. With goshawks and accipiters in general, there's always good, like a learning, like an adjustment process happening constantly. Interesting. Very interesting. Aaron, do you have anything?
So what ended up happening? Yeah. What ended up happening to her? You sold her eventually, which can't believe you sold her.
Yeah.
I can't believe I sold her either. I kind of kick myself every day, but at the time, I wasn't sure I was going to end up, and there was a possibility I was going to end up in another country farming out there. So I was doing regenerative farming, and it was looking like when I left this farm that I might end up, moving out of, not just out of state, but out of country, and just not even knowing where I was going to be.
Where were you going to go?
I got married soon, possibly Costa Rica.
Oh, I was going to say Peru.
Possibly, yeah. And then Hawaii is not out of the country, but I almost ended up in Hawaii. So it was like, Hawaii, you can't do falconry. You can't bring a goshawk there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Costa Rica, there's no way I'm, taking a goshawk down to Costa Rica. So,
dude, imagine you caught you go down there with a goshawk and catch some of those birds of paradise down there, doing those crazy dances.
Yeah,
that'd be sweet. So stupid.
All right, there'd be a lot of fun. There'd be a lot of fun things to hunt down there, but birds of paradise, I think, are in Papua New Guinea. So wrong place.
There's no birds of paradise. Isn't there birds of paradise? I look like an idiot. There's no birds of paradise.
I could be wrong. I could have
sworn there was one there. Whatever.
I might be wrong. Hopefully I'm not, because I was an exotic animal trainer most of my life. So if I don't know my birds, that's a bummer. But
I want to talk about the farm. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So I ended up selling her a falconer, and then 2 years later ended up settling kind of right back near where this original farm was. And then I tried to reach out to them to see how it was going. Then they never responded. So I don't know what happened. I'd love to get her back if she's still, but this was 4.5 years ago now that I had sold her and was moving on.
Oh man, who was it?
But I've moved on from it.
Who'd you sell her to?
I would have to look up his name. I don't even remember. He was a falconer here in California.
It wasn't Mike Clark, was it?
No. I know Mike Clark really well. Mike Clark, and those are the guys that actually really helped me just, up my falconry game, was Mike Maxey, Mike Clark, because they both worked at the LA Zoo. So when I was working at the zoo, they were there. John Gunther worked at the zoo. And then, the Seferdini twins, they were always around in the movie TV industry. So I worked with them a bit. So yeah, being around all those guys is a pretty high level of falconry. And if I did something in front of them that they thought was badly done or stupid, they would tell me. So that really helped. And I also got to watch them handle their birds and how they did it. And yeah, they just have a really high level of ability and expectation. So, I got started off on the right foot watching those guys do their thing.
100%. Yeah. I've talked to Mike a couple times on the phone. He's a real sweetheart, that guy.
Yeah. Mike's great. I should have, I look back on it, he had a goshawk named Freckles that was an amazing bird. And, he has all the videos of like the Varose eagles, the black eagles hunting, Betty the Tank. And his Cooper's hawk now, female Cooper's hawk imprint that's catching rabbits, cottontail rabbits, which out here is nuts because she's small. We have small Western Cooper's hawks. But yeah, he really knows his stuff. And I should have just given him Giselle, because then, I might have been able to get her back and he would have hunted the hell out of her. So, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's okay. We all make mistakes, but you could always make another one. I think with your background, you could imprint another one and do a good job.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to. I think maybe the next bird, I'd love to try passage goshawk. I just got to get to the point again where things are settled. Because after her, I flew a Cooper's hawk, an eagle, and a Cooper's hawk. So now I'm birdless, and I'm trying to decide what's next on the list. And it's either me kind of just like taking the easy route and getting a Harris hawk, or me going and getting like a passage, goshawk, and really trying something new for me.
Can you trap Harris hawks in California?
No, there's no trapping allowed. I don't think they might come into California occasionally, but they don't really have a presence here. It's Arizona, New Mexico, Texas.
I thought
those
for
areas.
some I think I'd heard that there's some small populations, but I guess Arizona's not far from you either.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 4-hour drive, 3-hour drive. It's not too bad. Nevada, it's all right there.
Have you ever hawked like out east anywhere? Like anywhere else?
I lived in Indiana for a year, actually. So it's fun story. I moved to Indiana territory. Try to get a.
Did you ask permission to Mounier before you came into his territory?
No, I don't know Mounier. I'll have to look him up after.
You don't know who Mounier? Everybody knows who Mounier is.
I don't
Jonathan.
know. I've been out of the loop.
No, it's Jonathan Munier. He's the Falconry Told, Falconry Chronicles host.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The French pronunciation of his last name is Mounier, so it's just an ongoing joke on our show, and because he has his own show, we have our show, so we kind of like bust each other back and forth, and it's fun. He'll never listen to this, but his friends will tell him.
Yeah.
That's what makes it funny.
I don't know him, and I ended up in Indiana for a year because I was trying to get a falconry TV show picked up by Discovery Channel. What TV show? Talk to us. So there was a falconer out there, and he was trying to get this TV show going. So I went out there and I was helping him, shoot. You call it a sizzle reel in the industry. Like it's a quick kind of like, this is what the show is going to be type thing.
Like a pilot, or less than
like a pilot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so I moved out there, and we shot a couple different scenes, and shot this sizzle reel and sent it over to Discovery Channel. And then a month later they gave us feedback, and then we made some adjustments and shot it again, sent it over. A month later they give us feedback. But what happened was it ended up turning into like a Duck Dynasty kind of thing.
Okay. Where
they asked him to like rent a Corvette and drive his red tail around in a Corvette and take it to a movie theater and have it sitting in the chair next to him. I mean, it became a nightmare, right? But initially, initially the idea was we would go to a different country and learn about falconry in that country, learn about the birds they use for falconry, learn about their traditional equipment and what they used, and then see some hunting. Super awesome for a falconer, but I guess boring according to Discovery Channel for like anyone else watching it. So they wanted like arguments and, weird things happening where like the guy's wife was complaining that he was taking his bird to the movie theater and driving around the Corvette.
They needed to get. It
was really
Casey.
Bad.
They could get all of that naturally if they got with Casey.
You should have seen me today. my fucking tractor wouldn't pull the load of dirt across my lawn. I lost my mind today. It was even my mom was laughing at me. I was trying to just freaking do some.
You just do that with a hawk on your fist. Your wife is already always mad at you.
Oh yeah, just yeah. If Discovery Channel just watched my bird miss a slip in the field and watch my reaction.
Maybe that's what they needed. They needed you to be the on-screen personality, because I didn't go to be the on-screen personality.
No, they couldn't
help this guy get it going. But anyways,
it didn't happen.
Yeah, and after a bunch of those, like them coming back to us and asking us to like have fake arguments, and like with your girlfriend because you had the bird in the house, and
fake.
Took a dump on the couch.
How is that? That's why I had that just the other day. Are you kidding me?
I mean, those are real, but they wanted us to film it. So I had to like fake argue with my girlfriend at the time. Anyways, I decided it wasn't for me. But while I was there, I ended up flying a Cooper's hawk, catching a bunch of starlings, and then I got a sharp-shinned hawk also, and did a bunch of starling hawking out there, and I met up with some guys out there in Indiana falconers, and did some squirrel hawking, which was cool, and hawking in forests, because we're not here in Southern California. You're not even allowed to hunt squirrels. There's no season on them. You have to go to Northern California to hunt tree squirrels.
What is that? I've heard that before. I heard that before. Like, are they protected? Like, I don't get it.
I guess so. I have no idea. I never really looked into it because I didn't really care to look into it.
Are these gray squirrels?
God, it's really sad that I don't know this. I don't even know.
I think it's ground squirrels. I think there's certain types of like ground squirrels in California that...
Ground squirrels, they're considered a pest. The ground squirrels we have, the big ones, because those you can kill all day long. But the tree squirrels around here, you're not allowed to hunt.
Not if I move there.
Well, again, in Northern California you can. Just in Southern California you can't. So I never really looked into it. But I was in Indiana for a year. And, rabbit hawking out there is a whole different ball game. So there was a lot of squirrel hawking. I mean, there was rabbit hawking out there for sure, but it's just different here. We have cactus and rattlesnakes and stuff like that out there. It's like briars, and you need like leather pants basically to like walk through any of that stuff. Cause out here, I'm a little bit stupid when I hunt out here because I'm not hunting with a dog. So I'll step in the middle of a bush, which you don't usually step somewhere you can't see out here. And actually the first rabbit that Giselle caught, I did that. I went into this, giant bush that I saw a rabbit had run into, and I knew it was hiding in there. And I just jumped into the middle of it, and a rattlesnake was there rattling. And so I grabbed her Jess's because she went to try to go down and grab the rattlesnake. I slowly back out of there, and then the rabbit actually flushed, and that was how she caught her first rabbit.
Oof, that's sketchy
story, but yeah, in Indiana, you can't just like run through that stuff like you can here. So a bit different, but yeah, it was nice. The winter was great. Hunting in the winter in like real cold, like in the teens, the birds just acted so different. So that was really awesome to see.
Yeah. It's a different world. So would you say that falconry in your neck of the woods is easier, or is that just a myth?
Here we go.
Is that just a myth?
Is falconry easier? No, I would say falconry is harder in terms of weight control because you don't have the weather. You don't have winter to actually help you get the birds motivated. In terms of where you're hunting, like if you're in the high desert, it's spotted bushes and open ground. That's pretty nice. Where I'm hunting is chaparral, which is really thick sagebrush, and there's not a whole lot of open ground. So one of the great things about having North American goshawk out here hunting in that is you need a bird that's incredibly maneuverable. And Giselle, after, I don't know, year 2 or 3, she kind of started crashing brush. Not as good as a red tail, but she started crashing brush because without it, it's hard to catch them. You rarely get them out in the open. There's fields like that, but where I'm hunting is all hilly chaparral, it's sagebrush and white sage, black sage, purple sage, toyon, sumac, deerweed, just all kinds of junk out there. It's not like nice open stuff. But yeah, when you go up to the high desert, you go to like Palmdale, Lancaster, it's a little bit harder to find the numbers, but you get more open runs on them. So where I'm hunting, it's active. You're crashing through brush. You're falling down gullies. It's not easy. Or maybe I just make it hard. That's like my workout.
I mean, that was probably the best argument that I've heard for, falconry out west because of the weight control and the temperature, how that adds a whole nother element of difficulty. I mean, maybe the guys that post videos just make it look easy because the rabbit's just literally running in the wide open and the bird just catches it. So it just looks easy maybe, but we're just busting chops. We're East Coast guys here. So we got to bust a little chops.
Yeah.
So now,
Trevor.
Yeah, I mean, the falconry is great out here.
Yeah. I mean, that's why everybody's out there doing it.
Yeah.
Trevor, Casey touched on it earlier, and he actually mentioned something. Is it true that a farm you worked on was part of a movie or documentary?
Yeah. Yeah. So the farm I worked on is called Apricot Lane Farms. I don't work there anymore, but I worked there for 7.5 years. And they had a documentary that came out called The Biggest Little Farm. And I think you can still find it on Amazon Prime Video.
Great,
like that.
Great series. And you're in it too. I saw you.
I'm in it. Yeah. I was in it a couple times, but I was managing the farm so the owner could make the documentary. So I was doing, the day-to-day farming, but I did a tiny bit of acting for like 3 scenes in there for the documentary.
What kind of farming do you do?
I do regenerative farming. So regenerative farming it's sort of like, I guess you could say, one step above organic farming, but the idea or the concept of regenerative farming is that you're improving the health of the soil and focusing on soil health as the thing that improves everything else. So, with old school organic farming, that was what they were doing. And then organic farming kind of just became conventional farming with organic certified fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides and fungicides. Regenerative farming, the idea is that in whatever modality you're using, that you're focusing on soil health, improving the health of the soil, and that therefore will improve the health of the food or the health of the crop or the health of the pasture that you're, grazing animals on, rotational grazing. There's a lot of different ideas there. But a lot of people define it in different ways. But I think the foundation of regenerative farming is improving soil health and trying to make a more robust farming ecosystem and rely less on inputs as much as you can to an extent.
That was a good description.
So what are you producing?
So it depends. When I was at Apricot Lane Farms, we had some mixed orchards. We had citrus orchards, avocado orchards. We had pastures that we were raising, pasture raised pigs, pasture raised chickens, pastured eggs from chickens there. And then we had sheep, we had cattle, we had, a vegetable operation, and then we had a bunch of mixed stone fruit. So we're producing all of those things.
Yeah, and the documentary really it's very well done, very creative, and it's very engaging. It's not boring. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's a good family film, good family night watch.
Oh yeah, we love that. And I literally was watching with my wife, and I messaged you. This was years ago, but I messaged you. I'm like, dude, did I just see you in some show or movie? And you're like, yeah, that was me. Yeah.
You sound just like him, dude.
I know, I'm so good. My wife was like, no, you don't know that guy. I'm like, he's a falconer, I swear. She's like, no, he's not. I'm like, yeah, he is. Yeah. And I messaged you. I'm like, look, right here.
She's like, all falconers are losers. That can't be a falconer.
Yeah.
That's why they were able to get some good shots on bird of prey nests, because I had on the 250 acres, I had every Cooper's hawk nest, every red-tailed hawk nest, every red-shouldered hawk nest, every kestrel box that had a kestrel in it, every owl box that we put up. I knew where every bird was on that property. So yeah, it made it easier for filming. We did a bunch of filming of all that.
Did you get paid for that? Or is that a rude question? That was just because.
Well, no, I mean, the owner of the farm manager, you could say, who was making the film, John. He was just constantly filming anything that was happening on the farm. If it was, if I found a hummingbird nest, I would tell him, he would go film it. So this is, just my day to day being the farm manager, managing, a staff of, we had 75 employees, but I managed around 50 of them. And we were moving cattle and moving sheep, and this is when we're harvesting, this is when we're fertilizing. So I was always all around the farm, and, because I had Giselle and I was hacking her, and I would pull coops from nests on the farm to hunt with, that I'd hack and hunt. So I just always kept track of what was going on there, and it just made it easier for them to find stuff to film.
It was so neat. Now, did you have permission to hunt on the farm? Or was it like weird?
Yeah, I did. And actually, I mean, I mostly didn't hunt on the farm because we always had chickens and ducks out. And so I always had to work around to wherever they were, just in case. So I ended up hunting on the neighbors' properties a lot, but I got permission from them. And they had, they had like 700-800 acres of berries, or the property was 700-800 acres. And then the flat top was all berries. And then all the gullies was just, chaparral kind of wild space. So I hunted all around their berries, which they liked because I get the rabbits out of their berries. And I would hunt rabbits on the farm. The cool thing is, or maybe not the cool thing, but being on a farm where a rabbit is considered a pest, you're allowed to hunt them if they're damaging your crops. So I was able to hunt, kind of like early in the year, late in the year. It was a good spot to be in.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a plus. Yeah, and the whole thing about the soil, regenerative farming and all that. Me and my wife, when we first got married, we rented a small place on an organic farm. And I mean, the farm was in the family for like 100 years or something like that. And the owner was a complete like dickhead. There's really no other way to put it, but he would talk like every now and then when he was like, when his meds were working or whatever his deal was, he would like talk to me about the farm, and he knew I was like a falconer into like, stuff like that. And he would talk about how, because he's organic, but not regenerative. So the soil, like, he's like, we're not going to be able to grow anything, in the next 20 years because the soil, everything's been sucked out of the soil and it's like dead. So he's like, I either have to spend tens of thousands of dollars to bring in like fertilizer and mix it in manually or something. And, but you could definitely see that, just standard organic farming is basically the same, just without the pesticides, or at least like the ones that give you cancer, even though they all probably give you cancer.
Yeah. I mean, we try to avoid it as much as possible, but yeah, there's a lot of room for improvement in the ag industry when it comes to growing healthy food and taking care of topsoil so you don't run out of it in 20 years. So that's mostly what I spend my time on now is, working on that stuff and consulting for farms that want to become regenerative or people that want to set up regenerative farms.
That's neat. What's your fee to do consulting? Maybe I'll put in touch with this guy.
It's a little more expensive these days, but yeah, if I love talking. Yeah, I love talking farming. So if there's anyone's interested, they could always hit me up and ask me a farm question. But yeah, it's been interesting to go from animal training, like getting attacked by a camel, to like working on a farm with cattle and sheep or pigs. And I went from walking a mountain lion on a chain to like herding sheep around. So it's changed, but it's for the better.
That's super neat. The whole big cat thing, Aaron, he wants to get a crocodile, like a full blown, like saltwater crocodile in his backyard, like, and build a whole enclosure for it. I think he's crazy, but, we love, if you're a falconer, I feel like you're just automatically like into like exotic, cool stuff like that. Right.
I mean, I started off that way, like I had snakes and I had tarantulas when I was younger, and I had all those lovebirds and everything. But as soon as I got a hawk, I kind of just dropped everything else and just really focused on the falconry. But yeah, I got to work with some cool things. Like I said, baboons and camels. I got bit by an alligator. It was a small alligator. He was only like 6 feet long. And his name was Happy. We would take him out every day, put him on a leash and like walk him around the lawn area and do shows for kids with him. But one time he nailed me, and then I had a camel trample me and all kinds of fun stuff. I got attacked by a kinkajou. That was the worst one. The worst animal attack was a kinkajou. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's in the raccoon family, and it looks like a mixture between a teddy bear and a monkey, but they have the bite of a pit bull. This thing like tore up my hand so bad.
Yeah, I know a girl. I was homeschooled, and there was a girl in our co-op, like our little homeschool group or whatever. She had a kinkajou, and I remember it like latched onto her and like just straight up attacked her. Like it didn't just bite her; it like mauled her in her bedroom. And I remember she was like destroyed, man. And it's like the cutest looking it's like the cutest looking animal ever. And this girl was big too. She's like a big girl, you know, she was like 6 foot, like big girl. And I mean, this thing just like, it messed her up good. What's the worst
pair of those?
A kinkajou?
Somebody was, they were trying to give me a breeding pair of kinkajous.
Dude, a kinkajou is basically like a monkey tail skink, but like the animal version. Like they're super cool. They look cool, but like they're not the nicest. I mean, that's just what I've seen. They're not like the nicest animal. Like I wouldn't trust them fully. Right? You have them.
I mean, they can be great. I just had an unfortunate experience with this one, but you know, I was young and dumb and kind of pushing limits, and it is what it is. But
so, all right. So I just got to ask a couple more questions. So with the big cats, from what I was told, it's not a matter of if you're going to get bit, when you get bit. Is that true? Or is that like a myth?
No, that's a myth. I mean, it depends. Like I only worked with mountain lions and servals, you know, lynx, bobcats, so the smaller cats. I mean, the mountain lion's big, but not, I interacted with some tigers and lions, but I didn't work with them. Lions though, you know, lions being super social, most people are generally not getting attacked by a lion that they've worked with for a long time. I'm speaking in generalities, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
But you're way more likely to get attacked by the tiger that you work with than the lion that you work with. So if you have to pick a big cat, you know, working with lions that are super social is probably a better way to go than working with tigers. But that's a personal opinion. It doesn't stand for the whole, you know, training world out there. But I mean, I was kind of going in that direction, but then I heard about a couple people that were killed by this tiger and that bear. And I was just like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to work with the large predators actually, because I know I'll do something stupid one day or trip and have something pounce on me. So I just kind of stayed away from it. And, you know, I was doing more working with monkeys.
Dude, that's even worse. I don't trust a monkey, bro.
When you get to like chimps, yeah, then it's worse. But I was working with baboons, and you know, like
it's even worse. You don't think a freaking baboon?
No, I mean, so as a male working with a female baboon, generally speaking, you're in a pretty solid place because they're super hierarchical.
Right.
They just
fight off a baboon. You could
no, bro. No way.
Not a male baboon, but a female baboon, you'd be okay.
So you don't think you could fight off a male baboon?
Well, you can, but it's a flat out fist fight, and they have canines this like almost the size of a tiger's canines. They don't have the bite of a tiger, obviously, but I knew a guy who was like 6'5", and he was a baboon trainer. This is what he did like as a profession, and he had a mandrill, which is the largest baboon, basically.
Is that the one with the pink?
Mandrill.
Is the one with the blue and
the
like
pink
the purple
face? Yeah, and then they have the giant canines. And that thing laid into him a couple times, and you know they had some fisticuffs to figure out who was the big boss. So it can be tricky, but I stopped doing all that and I started working with birds, domestic animals.
You're helpless if a chimpanzee decides that it wants to.
Oh yeah, God, yeah, no, just
rip your own nutsack off before it gets. Just to save the animal the time, just rip it off yourself. Be like, look, leave me alone. Yeah.
The slightest little thing happens. Like knee-jerk reaction.
All right, so now on that same topic, and I didn't set this up or plan this, as a professional animal trainer that has dealt with all different kinds of animals, this whole BS that's going on the internet, and I'm so like I don't even want to talk about it because I hate all this like little like fad little things that are going on. But do you think 100 men could take out a gorilla?
Well, 100 men could take out a gorilla? Yeah.
You think so?
I think so too.
I mean, yeah, I mean, gorillas are obviously very strong. This is a ridiculous conversation. Is this something that's happening on the internet right now?
Oh, it's going crazy. They're talking about it on like Joe Rogan, on like these big podcasts that everyone's talking about. There's memes everywhere talking about this.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is you're going to take a bunch of bites and you're going to get messed up. But if 20 guys piled on a gorilla and, held it down and tied it down, you're okay. But yeah, if
No,
it's
you don't have to tie it
if you're
down.
trying
You have
to
kill
individually like fight a gorilla, it's they're going to just, what's actually kind of funny, not maybe not funny, but chimps, they bite your hands and your face and everything, right? What gorillas do frequently is they'll go and they'll just grab your leg and then just drag you through the forest, and you die from getting from running into trees and rocks and stuff. They're a lot less like directly aggressive. Not to say again that they won't, straight up attack you, but generally speaking, gorillas are amazing, wonderful, very kind creatures. But if you happen to be in there with a male gorilla that's really pissed at you, yeah, they're just going to come over and stomp on you. But from what I have been told and from what I've seen, what generally happens is, they go and grab your leg, your arm, and they just drag you behind them. And, chimps don't do that. Chimps just like straight up attack you. But yeah, that's a funny, I don't know. I mean, 100 guys versus one gorilla. Yeah, I think for sure they could.
To the death.
Gorilla. Yeah, I think so. You get a couple guys that know jiu-jitsu,
That's what I was thinking. Just a bunch of guys distract it, and then just like a black belt in jiu-jitsu, just like get behind it and just lock in a rear naked choke while everybody else holds it down. That's the only way to do it. That's literally the only way to do it, because you're not going to punch it with your hands or feet to kill it. I mean, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So okay,
it'd be safer to just like everyone grab the gorilla and throw it in some water.
They can't swim, right, or something.
No, they can't swim. Gorillas, chimps, they're too dense. So a lot of old zoos, they would have a water moat between, the exhibit and like the people that were watching. So yeah, just find a pool.
That's fascinating. So with the chimp, we'll get off the whole topic in a second, but so with the baboons, were you training them? Were you like working with them? Like what were you doing with them?
Yeah, so the one baboon that I worked with was at this animal training school, and she was a older female baboon. And so as a male, it's pretty easy to work with them because they don't ever challenge you. So granted, this was not a baboon that was raised by people. This was a young baboon that came to people. It's kind of like an imprint hawk, right? Like if you get a passage bird, you generally don't have to worry about it attacking you. But if you get an imprint bird, you might have to worry about it. This was a passage baboon, we could say. And so as a male, she's never going to try to fight you or attack you. So it was a super chill thing. And then you're just training different behaviors. It's like operant conditioning. Like baboons can do backflips, and they do that when they see leopards. Things like that to, signal that they can see the leopard and for other reasons. But, you just get her to do it on cue, and then just a bunch of other random things. But the whole idea of the school was just learning how to train and work with animals. So you could go into the movie industry or the, zookeeping industry or, something like that. So yeah, I got to work with a bunch of really fun things, but her name was Olive. She was super sweet. It was a cool relationship. We'd hang out a bunch and just chill.
That's super cool though. That sounds super fascinating. Yeah. I'd still be scared, to be honest. I don't know. I've seen too many videos of, you seen that video of that little monkey and there's like an Indian guy and it just grabs him by the hair, just like real quick. Like it's just like walking by him and it just grabs his hair and just pulls on it a little bit. And it rips his whole scalp off of his head. You can see his skull. It's like a little tiny, like a little monkey. You seen that video, Trevor?
I don't think I've seen the video, but yeah, I mean, if people want a pet, like get a dog, get a cat, like don't be looking at monkeys. And it's, it's funny because a lot of people in the past, they'd see me with a hawk and they're like, "Oh, is that your pet?" And I was like, "Well, it's not a pet. Like I'm hunting. This is a hunting partner, Yeah. When people say your pet hawk, it just, I don't know, it cheapens it. It sounds weird. So also like a pet monkey, I think it sounds cool, but like a dog is so much better than a monkey as a pet, like why would you do anything else?
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
So Trevor, what's next for you as far as falconry is concerned? I know you don't know exactly, but where's your heart going?
I mean, I've never really flown a long wing and I don't really want to. So probably, accipiters or another eagle, but I'll probably imprint another goss, but I would like to try passage goss. I think that would be really cool. The last Cooper's hawk I trained, I used like a kind of like an old Pakistani method where you use a gadi or a gadi. It's like it
goes over the shoulder
around their wings, goes over the shoulders, and doesn't let them bait.
Yep.
And that bird turned out great. I mean, we were sucking up quail, super awesome flights. And then that was really fun. That worked out really well. Towards the end of the season, he kind of losing his, I don't know what happened, but just towards the end of the season, he wasn't digging it anymore and he didn't want to fly. I mean, he wasn't sick. I tried increasing his weight. I tried lowering his weight and I just couldn't figure it out. But for like 4 months, it was amazing hunting with this guy. And instead of doing like the strobe light and the dark room training, I just like threw the gaudy on him, put him on a cot that he was tied to and just took him around everywhere, like they do in Pakistan. And it worked really well. Like, got him hunting pretty quick. But I've trained a lot of Cooper's hawks, and the one other Cooper's hawk passage bird that worked out really well. I trained it like you would train a red tail. I just like manned it in the light, and he turned out great. So I spent all this time doing strobe lights and dark rooms, and those birds just never turned out as well for me as this one. I trained like a Pakistani falconer, and this one that I just like manned like a red-tailed hawk normally. So yeah, I don't know. I guess, it'll probably be an accipiter, most likely a goshawk. And if not that, maybe if I settle in the right place, it'll be another rehab golden.
That's neat. Now the gaudy, does it go over both shoulders or does it go over one?
It goes over both shoulders. So basically the idea is they can't bait. So
when they go to push off, it's tied down, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have them tied down. You have their tail taped up so it doesn't get damaged. You have jesses on them and they're tied short. And then you have this gaudy on them. So they can't open their wings to flap and they can't bait because they're on a cot. So they can't really go anywhere. So they end up just kind of standing or laying down. So it kind of lets you expose them to things without them having the fear response of, wings out or baiting and hanging and all that. Like it kind of calms down the fear response. But I'm sure there's a way you could do that wrong and there's a way you could do it right. But it was interesting to try.
It's fast. I mean, dude, I just get so pumped about this stuff, and like I don't think the audience it's kind of like not entertaining to talk about, but like this whole discussion, like this is a technique that they were doing for thousands of years, I would imagine. And it's like my sponsor Phil, he gave me advice that when your bird catches something, and Connor Bucalo gave me this advice also, just when she catches something, you don't have to run in there and dive on it and help her, just let her deal with it. It also helps with their development, their mental development. And then if you're not standing right there, and each bird is different, right? If your bird's real mantly when you're close, if you stand back and they tuck their wings up, by them tucking their wings up and you being away, they'll learn to not mantle because there's no need to mantle. And if you don't give them the opportunity to mantle, then it gets shaped out of their behavior from you being away. So it's kind of the same concept where they wear the gaudy, they can't open their wings, they can't bait. So that whole behavior just gets shaped out of it just gets shaped out. So when your bird catches something and you run in and it mantles because you're right there, if you didn't run in and stayed back and the bird caught something, it would mantle for maybe a second or a couple seconds, start plucking, and then start eating and just tuck its wings. And then after it's calm and has food in its system, you can make in and trade it off. The bird may just eventually stop mantling altogether because there's no need to mantle. It just shaped it out. I catch, I eat, there's no threat. So it's just like, it's all like thousands of years they've been doing this stuff and like we're still talking about it. You know what I mean? It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I kind of found the same thing with Giselle where I never let her feed up on a kill. Every time she caught something, she got traded off for a pretty small amount of food. And so she just never, I would catch 4 or 5 rabbits with her and trading her off became really easy. There was just nothing to be possessive about.
Yeah.
She did mantle though. but it wasn't like mantling and screaming. It was just a little bit of mantling, and it wasn't that bad. If I sat there for a long time, it would, it would go away. But because I'm hunting in really thick brush, and we have bobcats and badgers and coyotes and red tails, I kind of was okay with the mantling. Right. But yeah, she never fed up on a kill, got a full crop, and we did a lot of multiples, and she would transfer really easily.
Yeah. So it sounds like, because that was the advice that Mike Clark gave me a while ago, years ago, that he never lets his birds crop up on anything, to just trade them to catch, trade off, and it's just a daily routine to catch and trade off. It's not this big production when they catch something, they break into it, they crop up on it, and then if you try to go for multiples later, then it becomes like this, you're breaking their routine. The routine is set from the beginning.
Yeah, and I think, if you watch some of his videos, like with his golden eagle, he's definitely cropping her up. I mean, she'll eat like half a jackrabbit. But I think initially you start them off that way, where you're doing multiples, you're trading them off for a small amount of food. And then, then if you want to crop them up in the future, I think it's easier to do that than to do it the opposite way.
Yeah.
Crop them up and then try to trade them off for multiples.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, who knows? So many people do things differently and have success. So,
right.
I might have to just imprint one more goshawk and make sure it turns out okay, to know that it wasn't just a total fluke that this all happened with Giselle. But the reason I did all these videos was partially just because I would always call all these falconers around me and ask them questions, and it's just easier for me to learn by seeing. And I had a bunch of these questions, and I thought maybe if I can kind of explain it in a way that's obvious, like not only can I go back and look on it and see, it was kind of like a diary almost, like what did I do with that bird, and did that work out? Should I do it the same way? But also just to show people, one way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just made my own imprinting video, which I was a little hesitant to make, but I had so much footage, so I just made it. But yeah, like you said, when I started getting my first imprint, because I got my first imprint 8 years ago. So when I was like thinking about it, and I, ordered, put the deposit, whatever, I was on YouTube, and I was watching your video, and I was watching everybody else's video. And yeah, I think the visual thing is super good. I think us talking about it is good. Some of the questions people have that they can't just get from a video or a book, I think it's good. I think it's a good conversation. That's why we're doing this series.
All right, guys, go check out Casey's imprinting video.
No, don't look at mine. Look at Trevor's video.
No, they've all seen Trevor's video. Go check Casey's video out. It's got like 15 views on it.
It does. I'm trying to catch Trevor. 2.2 million views last time I checked on that thing.
All right.
Yeah, I still have no idea how that happened. Like, I think it just released it at the right time, but like none of my other videos did that.
Bro, it's the shades and it's the freaking tricep, bro. It's the shades and the tricep in the video, bro. People are like, "Oh, let me get a look at this guy, bro. This guy's jacked."
Yeah, there was up about
this guy is yoked up. Let me see what this guy can do.
There's probably a little bit too much tank top and cut off sleeve time back then. I don't really wear that now, but yeah. I mean, also summers are hot here, man. So it's just like, kind of have to wear pants, but if you can wear a tank top and hunt, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, don't make excuses. It's okay. You're jacked. You're jacked at that point. It's okay.
All right. Before Casey goes to third base, Trevor, thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you very much.
Appreciated.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's been great. I love talking about this stuff. It's cool to see what everyone else is doing out there and shoot the shit.
Yeah, man. Heck yeah. Thank you for coming on.